Hey, it's Mr. Shrum, and we're gonna finish this genetic mutations tutorial right now. And we left off on this lesson activity, genetic diseases. And if you read through the activity, it talks about Huntington's disease and sickle cell anemia. And these are both hereditary gene mutations. Huntington's disease is actually fatal eventually because it causes a breakdown of the nervous tissue in your brain. Sickle cell anemia is a mutation that causes an alteration in the shape of our red blood cells, and that affects the delivery of oxygen to the body. So look at the images below and then answer the questions that follow. This is Huntington's disease. We have the HD gene or the HTT gene, mutant HD gene with greater than 35 CAG repeats, polyglutamine, mutant Huntington protein. Here's a blue affected person. Here's a white non-affected person or normal. And then autosomal dominant inheritance, basal ganglia. And then on this one, we have sickle cell anemia. And this shows how that is inherited. Hemoglobin beta chain in sickle cell, normal cell. Here's a sickle cell, normal red blood cell shape. And this is a sickle cell blood shape. So way less surface area. And this is how it's inherited. An unaffected carrier, unaffected carrier. So there's a 25% chance versus this 50% chance of affected. And based on the pattern of inheritance, do you think the mutated Huntington's and sickle cell genes are dominant or recessive? Well, Huntington's is dominant because the amount of inherited genes, or the rate of inheritance, is much higher, 50%. So that is a dominant pattern, a dominant trait. Only one gene contributed by one parent is needed for the disease to show up in the child. So that gives the child a 50% chance of inheriting the disease. So that is a dominant trait when you just need one cell from one parent for the disease to show up. Sickle cell anemia is recessive because a child has to inherit genes from the mother and the father to have the disease. So that's statistically less likely to happen than the Huntington's dominant trait. The first signs of Huntington's disease often appear when a person is in their 30s or 40s, but it can appear later in life too. The earliest symptoms are often subtle, like mood changes. Do you think the subtle presence of symptoms plays a role in this harmful gene persisting in our population? Why or why not? Well, yes, subtle presence of symptoms contributes to persistence of the gene. Maybe people don't know they have the condition before choosing to have children, especially if an affected parent does not have clear signs or symptoms of the disease yet. It could also be a problem if the expecting parents do not know their birth parents or their medical histories. So if they're adopted or people passed away before talking about their medical histories and what they had before they passed away. So if people don't know their medical histories and their family, that could potentially mean you may be passing on harmful traits to your children if you choose to have children. In about 90% of cases, Huntington's disease is inherited, but in 10% of cases, there is no evidence that a parent has the disease. Why do you think this is the case? New mutations can also occur randomly, so there's a smaller chance that children of parents who didn't inherit the gene for Huntington's can develop a mutation in the gene that causes Huntington's disease. So it is randomly possible to develop that disease regardless of your parents. For both conditions, explain how protein synthesis contributes to the symptoms of the disease. So if you go back to these pictures, you'll use those to explain for each case. So in both cases, the mutation that occurs causes the body to make a mutated protein. Protein is needed to build all body structures, and that includes red blood cells and organs like your brain. So these mutated proteins cause errors in growth and development, leading to symptoms of the disease. Gene therapy, altering the genetic code to repair or replace damaged genes, is a promising field for genetic conditions like sickle cell anemia and Huntington's disease. List one scientific question for each condition that could help guide gene therapy research for those diseases. Would replacing the mutated gene for sickle cell anemia lead to the development of normal blood cells? Is it possible to correct the gene for Huntington's disease before the symptoms appear? Those are some scientific questions for each condition that could help guide researchers. Explain how these mutated genes contribute to genetic variation in our species. Mutations lead to the development of new traits, which can be beneficial or neutral to the species. In the case of these diseases, the traits present as harmful diseases that affect survival. The traits present as harmful diseases that affect survival. Okay, so now we're looking at science in the news, mutations in the human genome. Mutations occur randomly, and humans are actually genetic mutants. And the human race carries mutations in its DNA. In fact, we even have some mutations that our parents don't even have. Mutations give us new traits and add to genetic variation. Recent technology has enabled geneticists to take a look at where the mutations exist in our DNA. They can then use this information to learn how these mutations connect to our evolutionary history. So there's another video. Why do you think the narrator used the term successful mistakes for his chromosomes? Well, his chromosomes were successful because they ultimately ended up forming a full human being. However, they weren't perfect copies of his parents. There were also mutations or mistakes, one could say, present in his genome that show evidence that the human genome changed and evolved over a long period of time. The genes for red and green color vision are located on the X chromosome. Men inherit XY chromosomes, and women inherit XX chromosomes. Red-green color blindness is the most common color blindness in humans, far more common than blue color blindness. Red-green color blindness is caused by a recessive gene and disproportionately affects one gender more than another. Which gender do you think is more affected by inheriting a mutated gene that causes red-green color blindness? Why do you think the recessive gene contributes to this effect? Males would be more affected because they inherit only one X chromosome. Women would have to inherit two recessive genes to develop the trait, while men would only have to inherit one. And then that's the summary. So I hope you enjoyed this genetic mutations tutorial. We broke up the videos into a few different parts, so hopefully they're more manageable to watch in each setting. But until next time, I will see you all and have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.